So today we're going to talk about traditional versus independent publishing and how it works. Now I know that I did a video that was traditional versus independent, the pros and cons. This is more talking about traditional versus independent, how it works, the actual breakdown of each step that you want to go through and why it is beneficial or not beneficial if you decide to take a different way, because there are multiple ways to get to traditional publishing and multiple ways to get to indie publishing. It's not just a straight path. Everyone has their own path towards getting traditionally or independently published. That being said, let's move forward. I'm going to start with traditional because most people want to do traditional, especially since it's at no cost to you for the editing, the cover designer, formatting, etc. However, you have almost no say in the matter, as I mentioned in the previous video, so that's the one con of that. Some people let you have a little say, some people won't. With that, you're probably going to want to query an agent first. Now, you can do unagented. However, unagented submissions are going to be harder. There's going to be stricter deadlines about when you can submit, how you can submit, and what it's going to look like. And on top of that, there's a lot higher rate of unagented submissions. As a result of that, that means that it's going to be stiffer competition. There's going to be about this high of a stack of things they have to go through, and your query letter is just one of that giant stack. Whereas with having an agent, there's going to be far fewer of them because getting an agent is so hard. As a result of that, it's going to mean that not only does your agent do most of the work trying to get your book accepted, but that also means that they can negotiate a higher contract since they have skin in the game and are going to take more from it. And by skin in the game, I mean they get paid more if you get paid more, so they're willing to negotiate you getting paid more. So that's a benefit of having an agent. It's also going to be beneficial because, like I said, the stack with agented manuscripts is going to be like this to compete with query letters, whereas the other one's going to be like this. So it's a lot less stiff competition because you have that agent there to back you up. And you're not swimming through all the unagented people as well. So the competition's lower. However, you can do agent or no agent. Most high-end publishing companies are going to require an agent, or they're going to have a very small 1-week window in which you can submit an unagented manuscript. That being said, you want to look at the places you want to get published at and figure out what those are for them. And you also might want to look at many different publishers because there's never any guarantees, even with an agent. However, it is higher likelihood with an agent. But then again, you also have to look through all the agents. That being said, beware of scammer agents. I would say definitely use the website Writer Beware. That gives you lists of all the scammer agents that are out there, as well as scam editors if you're going indie. So I'd highly recommend looking at Writer Beware. That will help you avoid getting scammed. Not entirely be sure that you avoid getting scammed, but it will help you avoid getting scammed. Next thing you want to do, obviously, whether you have an agent or not, is query. Now, if you have an agent, the agent will typically do it for you. They'll take your query letter, they'll take your manuscript, and they'll start submitting places. Whereas if you don't have an agent, you have to do this yourself. Make sure that your query letter fits the requirements that they suggest, and if they have any specific things that they like, make sure to cater to them. You don't want to send them a basket of lemon flavored cookies and stock them. That's bad. But you also want to make sure that if they're like, hey, in my query letters, I really like having X, Y, and Z, you want to make sure you have X, Y, and Z. You absolutely want to make sure about that. Then the last step for traditional: accept, reject, revise, and resubmit. Now this is the last step that you really have control over. The rest of it you technically are talked to, but not necessarily in control over. With the accept, reject, or revise and resubmit, just because you get a revise and resubmit doesn't necessarily mean that if you revise it, that they will accept it. It just means that it's a higher likelihood that they'll accept it. If they see enough potential change in your revision, then they'll probably accept it. Or there's other times where they're just like, you know what, we thought that it was a really great novel, but it just doesn't fit with us the longer we've thought about it. And that's okay. That just means you have to look elsewhere, unfortunately. If you get accepted, great. The next step is having their editor look at it and work with their editor, and then work with their cover designer, so you do work with them, but typically they're taking the spearhead and you're taking a back seat. you're a consultant, not in charge. This typically costs nothing. If you're traditionally publishing and they're demanding that you pay something, that is not a good publisher. That is a sign of what's called a vanity press. A vanity press is something that you generally want to avoid. That means that they're just trying to publish your book in order to make themselves money, and you probably aren't going to get a very good product out of it. They probably aren't going to give you their high-end editors. They probably aren't going to give you their high-end cover designers. They're probably just pumping those things out just to make sure that they have as many as they possibly can to make money. They're making money off of you and then off the sales, so both ways are bad. In general, try to find a traditional one that is not a vanity press, because then you will have no cost. Now, with independent, it's got a lot more steps. So, first, you want to finish your manuscript, obviously. Then you want to find an editor that works well for you. I actually had this writing conference recently, last week, and if any of you guys are interested in me hosting another writing conference, I'd be happy to do so. And one person asked, if you have to choose and you're going indie between developmental editor or line editor, which one do you choose? Now, almost everyone on the panel said developmental editor, and I agree with them. Here's why. When you're publishing independently, developmental problems in your novel are going to prevent it from selling. Most of the time, readers will forgive typos, they'll forgive commas, they'll forgive grammar mistakes, but they will not be forgiving of gaping plot holes. That's a huge issue. As a result, you're going to want a developmental editor for sure. Absolutely for sure. You preferably want both, a developmental and a line editor, and you can either have it be the same person or two different people. But if you don't have the budget for that, I would definitely say developmental over line editor all the way. And if you're looking for a way to get an even cheaper person, I would say A, shop around, because there are some people who do it for very cheap. B, make sure that you check out colleges if you know anyone who's currently graduating with an editing degree or certification, because they are more likely to do it for free, so that way they can get stuff on their resume. That being said, it means that they will be less experienced, but you'll still get your novel edited, which is important. With that, you're going to want to make sure that you find someone that works well with you. You don't want to find an editor who is trying to force your book to be something that it's not. If they're trying to make it better, that's good. But if you're trying to be like, I don't like this fantasy angle, make it sci-fi, oof, that's a problem. Or if they're just being really rude to you, again, problem. Again, check out Writer Beware. Writer Beware is a great site to avoid scam editors as well, because there are editors who will scam you, unfortunately. They will not do a good job. Most editors will either do a tiny free edit, or they will do a tiny partial pay edit, and what they'll do is they'll do kind of like deals in gift shops, you know, you buy this thing and I'll discount it off the full price. So, and I'm not being sassy, I'm just saying it's definitely a marketing technique where you get a discount on the full price if they pay you for the sample edit instead of just paying your whole thing. So that can definitely be good, definitely be beneficial. The next thing that you're going to want to do is cover design, and you're going to want to make sure this is a cover design that fits modern covers. Now, what do I say when I say modern covers? I say look at what's selling in your genre at the current moment and what things vibe with what you're trying to do, what things at their core feel a lot similar to your novel, and make sure they've been published within the last 2 to 3 years. And if they're really successful and really doing well, you're going to want to mimic a lot of what they're doing in their cover, because that means that the subliminal messaging is hitting all those notes for your genre. And that means it's going to sell and market better if you hit those subliminal notes. That being said, again, it's another cost, unfortunately. There are ways you can save money with this that we can talk about another time, but it's going to be another cost. Ultimately, you cannot self-do your cover unless you are a professional cover designer and want to do your own cover. But generally, if you do your own cover, people can tell and it won't sell as well. Not saying that it won't sell, it will, but it won't sell as well. That being said, next is formatter. Yes, you do want a formatter. I have read several independently published books that never got a formatter, and you can tell, and it actually drives readers crazy. The second they look at a page and it looks all scawampus and crazy, and the tabs are all over the place, and the line spacing changes at some points, it it makes readers want to stop reading. You want to make sure that you have a formatter that makes it look absolutely gorgeous inside and out. Because ultimately, unfortunately, readers are in today's society looking for any excuse to put your book down, especially if it's independently published, because of the fact that you have to do all the marketing yourself, which means that you're less likely to reach as many readers, and if you do reach a reader, they're not as inclined to trust you like they do a traditional publishing company. Unfortunately, that's just part of it. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but that's what I've noticed from my own experience with indie publishing and other people's experiences. Next, after you've gone through all those steps of an editor, cover designer, formatter, then you're going to publish it on Amazon. Publishing on Amazon can be super tricky, but for the most part, they try to make it very easy for you. They generally try to make it quite simple to get from point A to point B and try to make sure that it's easy to upload. Not always, though. I will say it does sometimes take about a day or a couple hours, so if you're doing one of those launch things, which I highly would recommend for marketing, where you're saying, hey, I'm publishing on this exact day, I'd recommend giving it a 24-hour update, so I'd release it at like midnight of the previous day, and then say this is the official launch date, just in case you have any glitches or problems, or it takes 24 hours to upload. You want to make absolutely sure that there are no problems with it, that it is all ready to go on the day of the launch. If you're not doing a launch date, then you have nothing to worry about. But if you're doing a launch date, that is what I would recommend for indie publishing. Now, for traditional, it's no cost. However, for independent, it can cost anywhere from $200, and that is if you're doing all the things I said, trying to find a cover designer that's good but cheap, trying to find an editor that's good but cheap, trying to find a formatter that's good but cheap, etc., etc. Or if you're just paying for it right out of pocket, don't care about trying to get it cheap, it could cost you thousands of dollars. Especially for some editors. I'll be honest, I as a freelance editor try to be on the cheaper side because I understand that it's difficult to find an editor, and especially in today's economy, it's really hard to pay for an editor. However, most editors tend to pay anywhere from 0.015 at the minimum. I do 1 cent per word, or at the most 3 cents per word, and that adds up really quick, especially if you're doing a young adult novel. If you're doing like we talked about with the word count a couple weeks ago, young adult tends to be around 50,000 words. Now, if you do the math, at the least amount, it is going to be somewhere around $600 to $700. Whereas, unless, like I said, you're getting a newer editor who's trying to put it on their resume, so they might do it for free or severely discounted. Whereas if you're doing a professional who's been working for a long time, that's going to be the minimum amount is $600 to $700 for a 50,000 word novel, and the maximum amount is thousands of dollars if they do 3 cents per word or more. I personally would say if you're doing independent, make sure that you're ready to market and that you have savings set up. Why? Because it is incredibly difficult, unfortunately, in today's market to compete if you do not have an editor, a cover designer, and a formatter. So you're just going to want to pay for those, unfortunately. That being said, those are the best ways to go about traditional and independently publishing and kind of walking you through the process. I know that a lot of people don't know about the whole process, and so it is important to go through the process. If you have any questions about the traditional publishing process or the independent publishing process, please ask me those questions in the comments. I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have about publishing independently or traditionally. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you are able to come to our meeting for August on the 31st from 8 to 9 p.m. Thanks. Bye.